invite Honorable Zibi.
Honorable Chair, Mr. President and Deputy President, honorable members, our country has entered an era in which we have to work together to deliver the promise of prosperity to millions of South Africans. The capacity and strength of the presidency is critical to that mission. But that comes with the responsibility to demonstrate that we are indeed in a new era. Our system gives enormous discretionary powers to the president, and the exercise of that discretion can determine the extent to which Parliament is able to exercise meaningful oversight. Over the years, the size and scope of the presidency has expanded significantly. The agenda that you set out, Mr. President, in your opening of Parliament address and in your response yesterday is sprawling. It covers everything from the reform of executive oversight over state-owned companies to climate change and foreign policy. However, Mr. President, the growth of the presidency and its work is not being matched by efforts to ensure that the many issues that previously fell under ministries continue to be that are subject to parliamentary oversight continues to be so. This situation should not continue. Because, Mr. President, at the heart of South Africans' unhappiness about that democracy is the sense that the government leaders are not accountable. There is no one more obligated to set an example than you, Mr. President, by working with Parliament for this body to provide oversight over the work in the presidency. It is also in this vein that you need to publish performance agreements with ministers so that we can see how they align with the annual performance plans. Secondly, the manner in which you previously chose to facilitate the appointment of senior officials, such as the SARS Commissioner and the National Director of Public Prosecutions, through independent public panels is commendable, but it is not institutionalized, not by regulation and not by legislation. Please formalize it and include an expanded list of critical officials, such as the National Police Commissioner and others. While it does not guarantee a perfect outcome, it reduces the risk that comes with unfettered and secret presidential discretion. Our country ended up on its knees precisely because of this. We would also like to see you engaging the media more regularly in a way that enables them to pose questions to you, Mr. President, not just through your spokespeople and ministers. The one-way broadcast with no time for questions serve a very limited purpose and often cause people that say you can just send the country a WhatsApp. I think we can do better in that respect. South Africans want to see you engage deeply with the issues that affect their lives. They want to know that our president does not just read speeches, but is doing his job with empathy and passion. The norms you establish during the 7th administration will anchor the culture you cultivate in respect of executive accountability in the future. We have a responsibility to decide how we are going to continue to build a more perfect democracy that we hand over to future generations. Part of that responsibility is building the right institutional culture and continuing to strengthen institutions and institutional accountability. It is important, Mr. President, that you lead by example in that respect. It is greater accountability that will see us build a safe, prosperous, and equal and united South Africa in one generation. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. I will now invite Honorable Maiman from POSA.
Honorable President, Honorable Deputy President, Bagaitsu Dumelang. Mr. President, I have heard you extensively speak in this House about how we need to be builders. And I thought it'd be opportune for me to say it's precisely why we started Build One South Africa. So if it's possible, I would like to offer you an honorary membership and perhaps we can build this country going forward. May I highlight, honorable members, that ultimately, if we are going to build, the dynamic of one is important. And nditsho njalo, Mr. President, ngoba ngomgqibelo bendipha eSamora. Abantu baseSamora imvula ibamoshile. balambile, abanamisebenzi, kunzima pha. Xa ukhangela aba bantu bathi kum, Mr. Maimane, apha kulo endlu yeparlamente imvula inethi ukutya kukhona anisokoli. It highlights the very point that this country faces, is that there are two South Africas or multiple South Africas. Our job, and I'd like to suggest, if we are going to create national unity, let's create national purpose. And let me speak about a few things that I think are going to be important for us to achieve. Deputy President Mashatile, as leader of government business, I want to ask you, the fault with the NDP was that much of the strategic objectives were not aligned to APPs. In fact, 45% to be exact, with 25% today being indicated as complete. If we are going to succeed, let's align on those. Mr. President, I want to urge that, particularly on this issue of state-owned enterprises, I want to speak just on two. The first is Eskom. It's clear that, in fact, we've got to not only transition from coal-intensive projects to perhaps sustainable energy, but I'd like to urge that we reject the demanded increase by NERSA. Because if we fail to do that, South Africans such as those who live in Samora are going to be double taxed. They are paying on a bailout on one end, and on another end, they are being asked to finance a high increase. The second is Transnet. Our people spend too much money getting to work. Let's fix PRASA so that at least there are trains getting people to work, so that at least whatever disbursements we give South Africans as a social wage, it can go further and not face up to the inflationary pressures that we see. Thirdly, I think the people of Samora would highlight the fact that the ratio of policing relative to their lives is 1:450, which is woefully higher relative to how many police we allocate even to VIP protection. May I urge, Mr. President, in my hometown in Dobsonville, it's 1:1,200. I want to urge that let's rather invest more in the safety of South Africans. Our people are paying protection fees at home. They are having to say to people, how do I get to work if I'm not protected? Lastly, we're going to have, in fact, I'd like to ask that we introduce a national civilian service, Mr. President. You've spoken about projects like the YES project and many others. Let's introduce a one-year mandatory program for young people so that they can spend a year interning and ultimately be able to work. This will give a sense of national significance for many young people, but an opportunity for them to work. I close with the call I'd made earlier. If we are going to have a national dialogue, which I would endorse, Mr. President, let it be a dialogue between the rich and the poor. Poor must be included in the dialogue. If we fail to have the dialogue with them, the poor will eat the rich. And lastly, I know I said that, you will chair the G20 summit. Let's maximize South Africa's investment potential globally, make it possible that we use that summit, not as a talk shop, but as an opportunity for South Africa and
Honorable
Africa.
Maimane.
Ke a leboga, Mo President.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.